Abomination Vaults. Chapter 6. Experiments in Flesh. Content warning. While Abomination Vaults contains typical Pathfinder action and adventure, it also presents themes of suicide, ableism, body horror, and human experimentation. Before you begin, understand that player consent, including that of the Game Master, is vital to a safe and fun play experience for everyone. You should talk with your players before beginning and modify descriptions or scenarios as appropriate. Chapter 6 Synopsis. The Abomination Vault's 6th level serves to support the gladiator games in the arena above, but also includes extensive laboratories for creating increasingly bizarre and powerful creatures. A small team of Sagathas pursue their flesh-warping experiments, while resisting encroachment from the devils below. The heroes encounter these worm-like monsters, but they also find a strangely civilized tavern in the midst of the dungeon. Environmental cues. Acid pitting on floors and doors. Crude graffiti carved into walls. Distant shrieks. Old bloodstains. Squelching noises. Stench of acrid chemicals and beer. Chapter 6 Treasure. The permanent and consumable items available as treasure in Chapter 6 are as follows: a +1 composite longbow, +1 glaive, +1 resilient scale mail, +1 striking battle loot, +1 striking hand wraps of mighty blows, +1 striking rapier, belladonna, bloodletting kukri, caterwaul sling, clandestine cloak, crafter's eyepiece, emerald grasshopper, folding drums, ghoul hide, hand of the mage, horn of fog, ichthyosis mutagen, iron cube, moderate acid flask, moderate antiplague vial, moderate healing potion, slothing toxin, standard grade cold iron shield, wand of gentle repose, wand of illusory creature, wand of magic missile 2nd level, wand of sea invisibility, and wand of status. Laboratories Features. This level feels more cramped than the lofty arena level above because of its lower ceilings, which average 10 feet high in halls and 15 feet high in rooms, unless otherwise indicated. None of the rooms on this level have light, as the denizens can all see in the dark. The stone doors throughout this level have sturdy iron hinges. Most can simply be pushed open, which the Sagathas do to move around. The smell of acrid chemicals lingers throughout this level, except near the Warp Brew Tavern in Area F11, where the smell of spilled fungus beer replaces it instead. Area F1, Central Shaft, a low level 6 encounter. The wide spiral staircase continues downward, leveling out long enough to pass by a single door leading east and a hallway leading west to a double door. The space between them has a rounded, cloudy window overlooking a large pool and a natural cavern. A dim orange glow emanates from far below, and with it a sulphurous stench. The spiral stairs lead up to the 5th level in Area E1 and down to the 7th level in Area G1. The stairs and walkway connecting them have a narrow iron handrail to prevent a fall 40 feet down into Area G1. The window is a magically transparent stone, as it's part of the Gauntlight's support, and thus part of the artifact. It can't be damaged. It also can't be manipulated like the transparent stone elsewhere in the dungeon, as it lacks the control glyphs. Creatures. Jafaki knows that controlling this main staircase is the best way to keep Uraven's troops from invading his territory. It's also the ideal place to capture new research subjects. A Sagathi is on guard here, along with a Grothlot chained to the handrail. The Grothlot can move anywhere along the walkway in the northern half of the room. The Sagathi watches for attacks from below, so heroes descending from above might catch them off guard. Moaning and gibbering from monsters on the landing above aren't unusual and don't alert the Sagathi. If the Sagathi knows someone is coming, they cast see invisibility from their wand, suppressing their mindfog aura and feign friendliness just long enough to put the newcomers at ease. They then try to take the intruders prisoner, fighting to the death to do so if necessary. The Grothlut moans and charges forward when it detects intruders of any kind, but loyally follows the Sagathi's command. Reinforcements. Jafaki doesn't replace these guards. If the landing remains unguarded for more than 5 days, Uravain sends a cautious Barbazu from Area G3 or G5, and 2 Dreshkhans from Area G4 or G15 to secure it. Area F2, Grime Deposits. Rust and grime fills this octagonal chamber. A wide hallway leads to the south. A circular shaft in the ceiling leads up 25 feet through the stone to Area E2. If the heroes haven't triggered the pit trap there, the shaft's top is covered with a rusty grate that collapses when moved. Area F3, Rocky Cave, a moderate level 6 encounter. The mossy walls of this pebble-strewn cavern extend upward to a ceiling 30 feet high. A wide rounded window 15 feet above the floor overlooks this cavern. Dripping water echoes from the east. The moss on the walls is edible and in fact, surprisingly tasty. Creatures. Belcora bound several earth elementals here, more to keep wandering guests out of her nature preserve in Area F4 than any other reason. The elementals spring from the walls and floors in 1d4 rounds after any creatures enter this cavern. They have ethereal shackles visible on their limbs, representing their bound nature. The shackles prevent them from leaving this cave, but they can lurk just within the walls and floors. An elemental reduced to fewer than 5 hit points retreats into the stone and doesn't return for several days. Side quest. A hero who's an expert in arcana or occultism realizes that the elemental's binding is weak and can be undone. This reversal ritual must be performed in sight of the binding location. The stairs leading up to Area F2 or the window in Area F1 make good locations for the ritual, since the elementals can't attack anyone there. The ritual takes 4 hours, consumes 60 gold pieces of gems, and requires a hero to succeed at a DC 25 Arcana or Occultism check. The character attempting the check must be an expert in the skill being used. Up to 4 other creatures can act as secondary casters. Each secondary caster can attempt a DC 23 secondary check, as described in the Pathfinder Core rulebook, using Arcana, Nature, or Occultism, but must be trained in the skill used. The Unbinding can use fewer than 4 secondary casters, and need not include any. If the ritual succeeds, the elementals return to their home plane. The Living Landslide grants a boon to one of the heroes who participated in the Unbinding, likely the primary caster. That character gains the crystal sensibility of a Sodhound for 1 week. Treasure. The Sodhounds buried 6 gemstones worth 15 gold pieces each, given to them as payment for their service. Heroes who search the area find the stones with a successful DC 27 perception check. The hero with the crystal sensibility locates them automatically. Area F4, Deep Pool, a moderate level 6 encounter. A rocky shoreline drops steeply into a large pool beneath several stalactites. 5 square shafts in a stony ceiling lead upward. To the south, a barrier of transparent stone protects a winding raised ledge that runs along each side of the cavern. A short bridge, similarly encased in transparent stone, crosses over the pool to connect the 2 ledges. This area functioned as Belcora's underground nature preserve. She kept a pair of hydras here, as hydra blood has many applications in alchemy, magic, and flesh warping. The pool averages 15 feet deep, and tiny subterranean streams refresh its waters. Creatures. Jafaki maintains the preserve, and 2 hydras, descendants of the original pair, for the same reasons Belcora did. He induced them into a chemical stupor to extend their lives, lower their food intake, and reduce the amount of trouble they cause. When the heroes first arrive, The hydras are sleeping with just their heads above the water's surface. If the heroes approach this chamber carefully, with at least half the party successfully avoiding notice from the hydras, the creatures remain asleep. Any significant actions that disturb the water, such as someone falling into the room from above, rouses them. Due to the force alchemical hibernation, each hydra takes 3d4 rounds to fully wake up. In the meantime, it's slowed too. Each time a hydra takes damage, reduce the number of rounds remaining by 3. The hydras defend their territory to the death, but don't pursue prey beyond the confines of the cave. Area F5, the Deep End, a moderate level 6 encounter. The southern end of this cavern is entirely flooded. A walkway encased in transparent stone runs along the eastern wall, 10 feet above the water's surface. The hydras once kept their nest at the far end of the pool, where the depth dips down 25 feet. They're afraid of the recent arrival there, however, and don't venture into that part of the pool. An overhang above the deepest part of the pool is pierced by a well capped by a sturdy iron grate. The grate's bolts appear to have been broken from underneath, so the grate lifts off with only a little effort. With a successful DC 20 athletics check, anyone in the water can climb up into Area F9. A hero who searches the walkway and succeeds at a DC 20 perception check finds a suspicious masonry square near floor level. When pushed like a button, this secret door to Area F8 swings open. Creature. Uravane sent a Sluggagon to spy on Jafaki and his plots several weeks ago. The Sluggagon is paranoid and unwilling to take risks that might overtly expose their presence. Therefore, they spend most of their time fouling the water under the well if any creature comes to fill the bucket. If the heroes approach, the devil believes they've been discovered by Jafaki's allies and desperately attacks. Unwilling to admit defeat to Uravane, the Sluggagon fights until slain. They carry one of 5 pieces of Uravane's pendant, used to open the door to the Contract Devil's domain in Area G10. Treasure. The abandoned hydra nest at the deepest point of the pool contains the equipment and bones of long-dead gladiators. The only intact piece of equipment is a +1 resilient scale mail with lion motifs. Area F6, Dissection Chamber, a low level 6 encounter. Metal shelves and operating tables hint at this room's original purpose. Clean bones and bits of rusted metal lie in piles throughout the rest of the room. Jafaki has dumped garbage in this medical bay for decades. 3 shafts in the ceiling lead up to Area E4. The lids at the top open easily from within the shafts. A hero searching through the detritus discovers a large key with an elaborate 4-pronged design among the various bits of junk in this room. The key opens one of the locks in the Plinth Room in Area F7. Creatures. 2 ochre jellies lazily squelch around this chamber, feeding on trash thrown here. They move to creatures they sense, expecting food. If the characters don't immediately offer some sort of food, the jellies attack, fighting until destroyed. Treasure. Amid the jumble of items scoured clean by the ooze's acid is a chain shirt, a steel shield, 3 daggers, a pick, several caltrops, professional fishing tackle, a spyglass, 14 pitons, and 30 feet of chain. Area F7, Plinth Room. This chamber's east and west walls feature sharply angled alcoves, bearing stone carvings too defaced to indicate what they originally depicted. 2 angled plinths stand here, one in the alcove to the east and another in the alcove to the west. A single door leads north. The south wall opposite it bears an outline of a door, but no handle or latch. This mostly destroyed room once held relief art extolling the majesty of Belcora and Nimbaloth. All that remains are 2 plinths, one on both sides of the room, each bear a unique lock. The door to the south and the one beyond it don't open normally. Each is functionally a solid stone wall 2 feet thick unless unlocked. The eastern plinth features a lock with a round keyhole. Turning the proper key in this lock opens or closes the northernmost door in the passage to the south, the outline visible in this room, with a grinding noise. The western plinth has 4 keyholes clustered together in a metal plate. Turning the proper key in this lock opens or closes the southern of the 2 doors, also with a loud grinding noise. Without the proper keys, a character who's a master in thievery can activate one of these tricky locks with 5 successful DC 30 thievery checks to pick a lock. 3 copies of each key exist scattered around this level. The round key can be found on a shelf in the old medical supply room in area E5 and the prisoner processing chamber in area F10. The 4-pronged key can be found on the floor in the old dissection chamber in area F6 and in Vischari's safe in area F16. Jafaki also carries a copy of each key. Area F8, Observation Gallery, a trivial level 6 encounter. 15 feet below the ceiling, this gallery traverses all but the east side of a large blood-stained room, with a floor 5 feet lower than the gallery. A window made of cloudy transparent stone provides an excellent view of the nearby room while blocking direct access to it. 2 rounded observation areas overlook the room from the north. A small room to the south has a small table, an old chair, and stairs leading up. Belcora used this walkway to observe one of her champions closely as she pitted them against various opponents, or they settled disagreements through ritual combat. A magic enchantment on the 2 rounded observation vestibules transmits sound from the testing ground into the observation gallery, but not vice versa. The table features some pieces of chalk and a few writing slates upon which the Sugathis take notes when observing creatures in the testing grounds. The stairs near the southwest corner lead up to area E21. The northwest door has no visible latches, but the wall next to it features 2 distinct keyholes. One is a round indentation, and the other is a circular piece of stone with 4 separate holes. They function identically to the keyholes in area F7. The wall at the eastern end of the observation gallery bears faintly glowing magical glyphs. These glyphs simultaneously affect all the transparent stone ringing the gallery and operate as described in area F9. 2 secret doors lead out of this room to the north to area F5 and southeast to area F20. A hero searching the right area who succeeds a DC 20 perception check locates them. Both secret doors operate the same way. A masonry square near the floor level depresses like a button and causes the secret door to unlatch and swing open. Creature. A Sugathi researcher observes the Destrachan in the testing grounds and takes note on a writing slate. Upon noticing the intruders, the Sugathi becomes eager to see how the Destrachan performs in combat. They retreat as soon as possible to the east end of the gallery to turn the wall ethereal. Once the wall is no longer solid stone, the Destrachan's echolocation allows it to recognize the hero's presence and joins in the combat as the Sugathi directs, together presenting a severe threat encounter for 6th-level characters. Area F9, Testing Grounds, a moderate level 6 encounter. This 20-foot-high chamber's stone floor is heavily stained with blood. A wall of transparent stone separates the room from an observation gallery that rings its north, west, and south sides. The northeast corner features a short stone well, while the room's south end has a steep ascending staircase. The room juts out a side hall to the east that ends at a charred circle in the stone with a double door nearby. This chamber was intended for grudge matches between the gladiators. However, it saw equal use in testing monsters' capabilities. Since Jafaki seized control of this level, the room has served only as testing grounds. The room is 20 feet high from floor to ceiling, and the floor is 5 feet below the observation gallery. 2 iron ladders bolted to the north wall ascend the 5 feet to transparent stone, but they don't allow access to the gallery area unless the characters use the glyphs in area F8 to render the stone ethereal. A sturdy iron grate caps the well in the north. It was built to provide food, normally in the form of defeated combatants, cut into chunks to the hydras in the pool. The grate appears firmly fastened to the stone, but easily comes off if tried. The Slagagon in area F5 has broken away the grate's bolts for easy access to the Sagatha's chambers, but it has yet to muster the courage to venture into this room. The steep staircase to the southeast leads up to the Gladiator's Mead Hall in area E25. The charred circle in the eastern wing is the other end of the teleportation circle in the Mead Hall. Creature. Upon arrival, the characters find a Destrich hand systematically shattering crystal chunks with its destructive harmonics at the command of a Sagathi in the observation gallery. Hungry for fresh meat, it attacks the heroes immediately, particularly if they arrive with dramatic clanging through the teleportation circle. The Destrich fights to the death and pursues any foes that flee. The Sagathi in the observation gallery, if present, takes note throughout the combat. Area F10, Prisoner Processing, a moderate level 6 encounter. Anchored shackles and fetters line the north and west walls, and bloodstains obscure the stone floor. At the east and south, 2 sets of double doors lead out of the room. 2 steep staircases beside each of them lead further below. While Belcora lived, jailers brought prisoners up the stairs and shackled them to the walls before processing their paperwork on a desk that has long since been removed. These captives were then shuffled into the arena, ready to meet their death for the entertainment of Belcora's cheering guests. This room became a frequent battleground during the brief turf war between Jafaki and Uravain. When some degree of peace settled over these levels, Jafaki's creation still held this room. A single flesh warp remains on guard. 3 steps down the northern stairs, a solitary key lies forgotten beneath a crusty trunk of dried viscera. A hero who searches the stairs and succeeds at a DC 15 perception check locates it. The key has a round shaft tipped with several teeth of varying length. It opens one of the locks in area F7. The stairs descend to area G12. The hallway on the other side of the south double door gently slopes 10 feet down to the arena. Creature. A single Una curse guards this room. The Sagathas don't realize it, but the devils have inflicted an infernal malediction to gradually weaken the creature. It's now constantly restless and tense, but it remains determined to slaughter anyone who isn't accompanied by a Sagathi. Area F11, Warped Brew Tavern, a moderate 6-level encounter. Polished wooden tables, chairs, and a long wooden bar marks this chamber as a tavern. The smell of spilled beer and fried morsels pervades this room. In the southeast corner, an elevated stage overlooks the seating. Doors lead out of the room along all 4 walls, including a double door to the west that looks to be the main entrance. Once an elaborate dining hall for Belcora's gladiators and guests, this area has, over the years, taken on the function of a tavern for flesh-warped creatures, those waiting to undergo flesh warping, and a few rare visitors. It has had its current name, the Warped Brew Tavern, for more than a century. Due to Jafaki's general lack of discipline, many of this level's denizens come here to drink, gamble, and argue about who's going under the Sagathi's knives, and listen to some Shadow Malice, the resident band. The door to the southwest opens into a steep stairway that leads up to area E9. When the poltergeist there started flinging debris down the stairway, the patrons stopped using it, except as a garbage disposal. The stairway is greater difficult terrain. Creatures. 5 creatures are usually found in the tavern. A female drider named Lalizanax flipping through a book filled with crudely drawn drow erotica. 2 Morlocks playing a card game called Towers. A Morlock tending the bar, and another Morlock complaining to the bartender about having to wait so long for her flesh warping. There's a 1 in 4 chance that the tavern's band, Shadow Malice, is on stage when the heroes arrive. Instead of randomly determining this, you can also decide whether the band is playing. Lalizanx is ostensibly the bouncer, but cares little about what happens in the tavern. The Morlock patrons hope to be chosen for flesh warping in the near future, and even the Morlock bartender looks forward to becoming like the powerful Dresh Khans who come here from time to time. Everyone here assumes that intruders from the surface, like heroes, have come here to start a fight. If the heroes quickly display peaceful intentions, the patrons keep a close eye on them, but resume their business. The bartender only has a few drinks available, but sells them to the heroes at inflated prices. The patrons all have a starting attitude of unfriendly to the heroes. Lalizanx casts suggestion on any hero who persistently bothers her, insisting that they leave her alone. The Morlock bartender gives only a half-hearted attempt to prevent the heroes from leaving by either of the doors behind the bar. She doesn't consider her pay sufficient enough to stand in the way of well-armed intruders. The Morlock patrons all idolize the band Shadow Malice and bring them up in conversation. If a fight breaks out, the tavern's Adefin manager, Vishchari, comes from area F16 in 3 rounds to join in the battle. Vishchari and Lazinax fight to the death to protect the tavern they consider their home turf, while any Morlocks reduced to fewer than 10 hit points flee. If the members of Shadow Malice are present, they retreat to area F18 rather than risk injury. Side quest. If the heroes seem curious about Shadow Malice, regardless of the band's presence, the Morlocks all start chanting the band's name and "Challengers" in Undercommon. It might seem like the Morlocks intend to set up the heroes to fight against the band, but they call for a battle of entertainment, not of weapons. The cries bring Shadow Malice onto the stage if the band's not already there, and Raita, the band's vocalist, explains the rules.
You want to challenge us? Well, let's get to it. We'll each face off 1-on-1. Each pair squares off with some kind of show. Music, acrobatic tricks, displays of strength, whatever. Then we perform as 2 groups. Mine, then yours. Let the crowd tell us who's the best overall.
The challenge has an individual and group phase. The individual phase pairs each hero with one of the Shadow Malice's 4 members. If the party has more than 4 heroes, some must sit out of this phase. A band member provides the best solo performance they can on an instrument of their choice. Then the paired hero can attempt a DC 22 check with the relevant skill, such as performance, acrobatics, athletics, or any you deem appropriate to impress the crowd. This DC is the performance DC of the band member, which is 22 for all of them. Record each hero's degree of success. The second part is the group phase. Shadow Malice performs a high-energy musical number, then passes over their instruments for the heroes to use if the heroes don't have any instruments of their own. Unlike the individual contests, this phase requires a performance check. If the heroes balk, Rita grins and says,
"This stage is for performers, friends."
To compete, one hero must attempt a DC 22 performance check. This hero is the lead performer. Any number of other heroes can aid this check. In addition, the lead performer's performance gains a +2 bonus for each hero who got a critical success in the individual phase, a +1 bonus for each hero who got a success in the individual phase, and a -1 penalty for each hero who got a critical failure in the individual phase. Unlike the normal rules for bonuses, these bonuses to performance checks are cumulative with each other. If the lead performer succeeds at this final performance check, Rita acknowledges that the heroes are Shadow Malice's superiors on the stage, and resolves to leave them alone. Word gets back to Vishchari about the hero's success, and the tavern manager treats them with a modicum of respect. On a critical success, Ryder gives the heroes the group's instruments, insisting that the instruments belong in the hands of such talented performers. The other members of Shadow Malice grumble at this decision, but sullenly comply. If the lead performer fails at this final performance check, Shadow Malice sees the heroes as being out of their depths and resolves to attack the heroes right on stage. Anyone remaining in the tavern simply watches the fight, considering it a bloody part of the show. On critical failure, the patrons join the fight after the first round, which means the heroes should likely make a hasty retreat before getting overwhelmed. Treasure. The gambling Morlocks have a total of 15 gold pieces, 181 silver pieces, a gold tooth worth 5 gold pieces, and a perfectly fossilized tuna skeleton on the table. Behind the bar, there's 28 gold pieces and 74 silver pieces in the cash box, and a vial with sloughing toxin that the bartender can use to poison troublesome patrons. Experience award. If the heroes participate in the challenge against Shadow Malice, award them the usual 30 experience for completing a side quest. If the heroes win, award them an additional 80 experience points. Area F12, the kitchen. This sturdy kitchen features a lit stove replete with oil stains, gristle, and the strong aroma of smoke. Alcoves to the north contain meat hooks and overflowing baskets of fungus. Many creatures that frequent the warp brew are evil carnivores who relish the flesh of the living, so the meat hooks often have intelligent creatures dangling from them. There are 3 such creatures here now, all still alive but are unarmed, weakened from their captivity and desperate to avoid being placed on the menu. The creatures include a deep gnome named Glashdrumdur, a drow named Falsey Orshendeel, and a skulk named Jedzeli. The heroes find all 3 of them tightly bound, hanging from meat hooks, and unable to free themselves. Glashdrumdur, this grumpy deep gnome warrior, has been here the longest and is currently unconscious. If roused, he's quick to swear vengeance against the Flesh Warp raiders who captured him. Even after a few moments of reasoned reflection, he acknowledges that he's outclassed and prefers to leave the Abomination Vaults behind. He has little to tell the heroes. Falsey Orshendeel, this young drow rogue, is chaotic neutral, the most alert when the heroes first arrive here. He quickly asks for his freedom. He knows the Sagathis are considering transforming him into a Dryder or feeding him to the patrons here, and he desperately wishes to avoid either fate. He explains that he hails from a small drow settlement deeper underground called Yuldaris, but is unwilling to give much detail about Yuldaris to strangers. He says that the city welcomes traders and that the heroes should visit, peacefully, if they come to the area. Falsey and 2 other drow were scouting further from their settlement than usual when the Odefans attacked them. He was knocked unconscious and somehow ended up here. Though selfish, Falsey isn't evil, nor are the other inhabitants of Yuldaris. If the heroes let him go, he eventually returns to Yuldaris and might meet the heroes in Area I-6. The heroes' encounter with Feldalzi should suggest that Yuldaris is a safe place to visit and set the stage for a peaceful encounter with drow living in the lower levels. Jedzeli. This unfortunate skulk hangs limply on her hook. Her right hand is visibly missing. She constantly mumbles and murmurs about the man in coloured rags who takes her hand. Other attempts at conversation prove to be unintelligible. Before Yasondaclear discovered the psychic human girl, Doriana Menhemes, he amused himself by tormenting Jedzeli's dreams. With a successful DC 22 perception check, a hero who has interacted with Doriana notices some disturbing similarities with the way Jedzeli mutters about the man in coloured rags. Helping Jedzeli reclaim her sanity is a long and difficult road outside the scope of this adventure, but Glashdrumdur offers to look out for her if the heroes set them both free. Treasure. While nothing in this kitchen is suitable for consumption by anyone but perhaps a goblin, a large jar labelled Deadly Nightshade lies at the bottom of one of the mushroom baskets. The jar contains 4 doses of belladonna poison. Experience award. Award the heroes 30 experience points for each prisoner they set free and help to reach the exit of the Abomination Vaults. Area F13, Level 6 Portal Chamber. This circular chamber is plainly used for storage, as it has several large casks stacked along its rounded walls. Dull silver fills the faded runes carved into the stone walls. This room contains an inert teleportation circle like the ones in Area E18 and G2. As with those rooms, this teleportation circle must be reactivated with the Awakened Portal ritual before it can be used. Experience Award. Award the heroes 30 experience points for activating this portal. Area F14, Storage Room. Spare chairs and shelves piled with grimy bottles and poorly cleaned dishes fill this storage room. Area F15, Mouldy Supplies. Fuzzy yellow moss covers the shelves of this room and their contents. Hazard. The yellow mould has started to grow here, leaving the storeroom unusable. After months of being left alone, the mould has grown all over the walls and poses a danger to anyone entering this room. Treasure. A forgotten moderate potion of healing in the back of the room has partially congealed over time and become oddly lumpy. Although the potion is unpleasant to consume, it's no less efficacious for its semi-congealed consistency. Area F16, Tavern Office, a low level 6 encounter. This messy office features a battered wooden desk with paperwork and ink stains scattered over its surface. The only exit is a door to the south. This office belongs to the manager of the Brew Tavern, an Odefan named Vischari. The papers include supply lists, startling recipes for serving different kinds of fungus, and employee pay rates. The chaos of the office belies Vischari's orderly mind. She knows where everything is in here. Creature. Vischari used to make the trip from the Odefan stronghold deeper in the Abomination Vaults to enjoy the atmosphere in the Brew a few times a year. On one visit, she realized that the Sagathus planned to capture and experiment on her next time she visited the establishment. Rather than leave the tavern she came to enjoy, Vischari elected to make herself indispensable by murdering the tavern's current owner and taking over its operation. She's proven to be a competent manager, so the Sagathus have kept their threats to operate on her to a minimum. Vischari knows that anyone disrupting the Brew's operation threatens her livelihood, so she readily attacks surface dwellers who barge in uninvited. If she already knows the heroes, such as if they're best of the tavern's band, she is merely brusque at insisting her privacy here, insisting that they leave before she guts them and serves them in a stew. Treasure. A dented safe under Vischari's desk is locked with a simple lock, but Vischari, perhaps unwisely, keeps the key in the lock so she can access it easily. The safe holds a neat stack of coins, 34 gold pieces, 179 silver pieces, and 57 copper pieces, and an odd key with an elaborate 4-pronged design, which is one of the keys that opened the lock in Area F7. Area F17, Private Dining. Placed against the east wall, a disgusting buffet table holds a buffet of smelly fried morsels, glopping dripping sauce, and spiny mushrooms. This food is provided for the members of Shadow Malice. Although not poisonous, this buffet isn't likely to appeal to the palates of surface dwellers. Doors exit to the north and south. The one to the south has the words "Performers Only" written on it in Undercommon. Area F18, Dressing Room, a moderate level 6 encounter. Oversized furniture, certainly intended for rooms larger than this one, has been jammed into this small room. An acrid smell, like burning paint, fills the air. Shadow Malice's member hang out in this room when not on stage. The smell comes from a cracked, barely functioning hookah, but the band members nevertheless use it with whatever substances they find. Creatures. The 4 members of Shadow Malice are Gulzash, Krogala, Nox, and Raita. If encountered here, they simply insist that the heroes leave them alone. If the heroes seem up for a challenge, but aren't overtly hostile, Writer challenges them on the Warped Brew's main stage in Area F11, in the performance challenge described previously. If things come to blows with Shadow Malice, Gulzash swings his battle loot while Nox fights with their kukri. Kragala and Writer prefer to cast spells to harass enemies from a distance, but can fight in melee if it becomes necessary. Kragala clubs foes with her drumsticks, and Writer gnaws at her enemies. Any band member reduced to fewer than 15 hit points flees, taking their cherished instrument with them to seek a safer gig somewhere else. Area F19, Backstage, stands for music. A folded velvet curtain and a wooden cutout of a tree clutter this small space. Props for the stage are stored here when not in use. Gulzash usually sleeps on the folded curtain. Treasure. The velvet curtain is in very good condition and worth 10 gold pieces, although it weighs 5 bulk and smells vaguely of Zolgoth stink. Folded up within is a clandestine cloak. Anyone searching the room or taking the curtain as loot discovers the cloak. Area F20, Lower Observation Deck, a moderate level 6 encounter. This long chamber is rounded on both ends, with a door to the north and a curved wall of transparent stone to the south. A faint stink wafts from an exit in the west wall. This observation area permits an intimate view of the arena fights. Since viewing the spectacle is a bit better from the higher arena balconies, usually trainers or flesh warpers watch the fights here to get a close and detailed view of the action. Creatures. A Sugathi servant observes the Sharangol behemoth in the arena and takes note on a large tome. Their 2 Drashkan bodyguards stand ready to defend them from any trouble. The Sugathi frantically protects their research, screeching for their Drashkans to enter melee, while the Sugathi wields a sword in one tentacle and uses the other to keep their book away from their foes. The Sugathi also carries a tarnished silver key that unlocks the door to the main laboratory in Area F25. Treasure. The Sugathi's book contains several sketches of the Sharangol behemoth and notes in Aklo about its nature. It includes part of, and therefore derives abilities from, Driders and Erdefens. Its weakness to positive energy, and that it's kept docile in the arena by a steady diet of failed experiments. More than just a text about one specific monster, this book contains several insights of general applicability to other creatures. It's worth 25 gold pieces to a collector of rare tomes, such as Morlabent. Area F21, Spa, a low level 6 encounter. This room bears the rich stink of rot. Doors to 4 changing stalls prominently appear at the east end of this long hallway. Each door has a makeshift clockwork mechanism attached to it, and the mechanism connects to a lever on the eastern wall through a series of wires and pulleys. The hallway to the west is hung with 4 wide tattered curtains. Another, thicker curtain covers the hall's west end. The spa kept the gladiators in their best health and entertained visiting guests. None of the Sugathi or their minions want to use it. The 4 tiny changing rooms to the east have wooden doors that stop 6 inches from the ceiling and the floor. The 4 thinner curtains cover the alcoves that serves as massage rooms. Each only has a dilapidated massaging table. The thicker curtain conceals the entrance to another chamber. An enterprising Morlock engineer rigged a complicated clockwork latching mechanism to turn the changing rooms into very small prison cells. The lever opens all 4 doors at once, but then it sticks and won't close them again. Creatures. The room's stink plainly originates from the changing rooms. Some of Jafaki's minions captured, tortured and imprisoned 4 ghasts here, 1 in each changing room. The gaps below and above the doors allow their potent stench to escape, but not the ghasts themselves. They occasionally reach under or above the doors with their claws, but they can't harm anyone who isn't pressed up against the change room door. If freed, they immediately attack any living creature they see, so cunning heroes might use them against other enemies in the dungeon. Area F22, Sauna, a moderate level 6 encounter. This round sauna is constructed entirely from polished stone. A wooden bench lines the circumference of the room, save for the exit to the east, which is covered by a thick curtain. At the centre of the chamber stands a stone pedestal, topped with a heavy bronze bowl filled with red-hot rocks. A wooden bucket full of water rests next to the pedestal. The bowl maintains an evocation effect that keeps the rocks within it constantly heated. The command to turn it off and on is long forgotten. The intense heat in the room gives creatures in the room a -1 circumstance penalty to saving throws against fire effects or against effects that give the enfeebled condition. Creatures. Merschen is a rare sculk who enjoys public attention. Once lauded as his town's best brawler, he started exploring the world in search for fame and wealth, and to further his ability to hurt people who consider themselves strong. Eventually, Merschen came here with the notion that the Sargathus could make him an even better warrior. Jafaki believes Merschen will make an excellent candidate for flesh warping, so they shower the sculk with treasure and pit him against their finest monstrosities in the testing grounds in Area F9. A sigil on Merschen's forehead reads Victor in Aklo. Merschen hasn't figured out that the Sargathus don't intend to leave him once they've experimented on him, or that their experiments will likely result in a tortured existence. He feels like he'll be able to take on whatever physical improvements the Sargathi have to offer and return to a life of seeking championships on the surface again. Merschen doesn't like being outnumbered and therefore doesn't pick a fight with the heroes right away, yet he doesn't want to simply let them go. He attempts to make his way past the heroes to the lever to release the ghasts. Once the undead have softened up the heroes, Merschen plans to beat them to death. He doesn't realise that the ghasts are just as likely to attack him as they are the heroes. Merschen flees the Abomination Vaults altogether, if reduced to fewer than 20 hit points. Side quest. Merschen has met the Erdefan pugilist, Vishchari, a time or two. If the heroes take time to talk with the Skulk, he mentions that he wants nothing more than a one-on-one brawl with her to determine who's best. Vishchari has never taken Merschen's challenge seriously, and the Sargathus consider her too useful as a manager of the warped brew to force her into the arena. If the heroes agree to set up a match between them, Merschen lets them leave to do so. Vishchari won't agree to a fight unless the heroes are on good terms with her, such as if they bested Shadow Malice. To convince her, the hero must succeed on a DC 23 diplomacy check, Vishchari's will DC, which convinces her to accept Merschen's challenge. The two set up an exhibition map on the Warped Brew's stage, wagering Merschen's magical hand wraps against the contents of Vishchari's office safe. The two are evenly matched, so you can decide who wins. Neither combatant will be in any shape to challenge the heroes in the aftermath. Whether or not the heroes threaten to pounce upon them in this moment of weakness, the victor considers the possibility and offers the spoils from the fight to the heroes if they agree to leave them alone thereafter. Treasure. The heroes can find the Skulk's treasures stashed under a bench. A gold and emerald ring worth 40 gold pieces, a ruby encrusted dagger worth 70 gold pieces, and a fine mithril bracelet worth 20 gold pieces. Area F23. Storage closet. Cluttered tools, scraps of wood, and furniture are haphazardly stacked in this cramped room. The Sargathus use this area as a storage closet. Only their alien minds can comprehend why they store things like broken tables, 3 cots hopelessly tangled together, a dismantled clock, a brass kettle with 4 evenly spaced holes in its bottom, and 7 mustard yellow moth-eaten bedsheets. Treasure. A hero searching this area might find rare treasures hidden among the trash. Each successful DC 22 perception check reveals 1 item, while a critical success reveals 2. The valuables include an emerald grasshopper, a hand of the mage, an iron cube, and 2 ichthyosis mutagens. Area F24. Torture Chamber, a low level 6 encounter. As the heroes approach this room, there's a 1 in 3 chance that one of the Z-Bubs in the room is invisibly patrolling the hallway. If it spots the heroes but isn't detected, it returns to the torture chamber with Dimension Door to alert the other devils, who prepare to rush out of the room and attack. The stone walls of this chamber appear to glisten with blood. An Iron Maiden stands in one corner, while the other corner has a metal table bristling with nails. Belcora felt the natural red stone walls of this room, which appear slick due to water seeping through them, made it an ideal place for a torture chamber. The victims here were usually gladiators in the arena who she felt showed mercy or an insufficient will to fight. Creatures. Uravain sent a Barbazu and 2 Zebubs to secure a foothold on this floor and prepare for an incursion. The Barbazu keeps weapons at the ready and awaits further orders. A Zebub sometimes patrols the corridor to the north to ensure they aren't caught. When they spot one of Jafaki's minions in the corridor, they attack, drag the minion back and torture it to death. The Iron Maiden currently holds a Morlock's corpse. A double reduced to fewer than 15 hit points flees from combat and heads back to the prison level using Dimension Door where possible. They report the hero's presence to Uravain, who then reassigns them elsewhere in that level at your discretion. Special note: Hell-forged weapons. Weapons forged in the depths of hell often gain sinister powers. Uravain established a Hellforge on the prison level in Area G4 and has gifted a few of his favoured followers with Hellforged weapons manufactured there. In the hands of a devil, these Hellforged weapons gain the Agile and Deadly D8 weapon traits. If the weapon already has the Deadly trait, increase the size of the Deadly damage die by 1 step instead of giving it a Deadly D8. Although worth as much as an ordinary weapon of its kind, Hellforged weapons exude a palpable menace, so upstanding merchants usually refuse to trade in them. Area F25, Main Laboratory. The door to this chamber is locked with a good quality lock. A character who succeeds at 5 DC 30 thievery checks to pick a lock opens the door. Alternatively, the key held by the Sagathi in Area F20 can also open it. The heroes can force open the sturdy door with a successful DC 30 athletics check. Books, glass bottles emanating smoke, and a clump of slime fill the shelves that cover the high walls of this chamber. The southern area displays the dissected remains of several creatures, pinned to a wall like rare and unusual specimens. The head of a Morlock, somehow kept alive through mechanical means with tubes and wires connecting to its body, screams a constant hoarse note. The ceiling of this room is 25 feet high, and its shelves go all the way to the ceiling. Jafaki's background. Belcora first spotted Jafaki and several other Sagathis slithering through the Darklands while she was building the Abomination Vaults. They expressed an eagerness to serve her and advance their own experiments. Belcora knew the Sagathis could improve her forces as well as expand. She tasked them with building a perfect soldier, then making armies of them to conquer Absalom. Knowing that perfection was a high price to ask, Belcora funneled all the resources she could to the Sagathis. The Sagathis pursued not one research path, but many, including flesh warping, monster breeding, and even dabbling in magical constructs. Belcora didn't mind this broad experimentation, as nearly all of it provided her with useful monsters for her growing army. She passed along the Sagathi's innovation to other alchemists and mages who could duplicate the work. When the Rose Guard defeated Belcora, the Sagathis nevertheless continued pursuing their objective. Their initial obstacle was a bone devil named Takana. Takana deemed the ongoing duty to Belcora, to whom the bone devil remained loyal even after her death, meant taking a firmer hand in overseeing the Sagathis. Takana tried to constrain and direct the Sagathis' sprawling research. Rather than comply with these unwelcome demands, the Sagathis rebelled. Jafaki ambushed and killed Takana and seized control of the laboratory's level. This assault started a brief war between the devils and the Sagathis. For months the two sides fought, but Uravain soon discovered the Sagathis weren't really interested in expanding their holdings, only defending the territory that they had. The two sides settled in an uneasy truce on their respective levels of the vaults. These front lines weren't absolute. Uravain is happy to permit potential raw materials to pass through the prison, and the Sagathis' cast-off creatures often find their ways into the devil's gradual increasing forces. Jafaki has little concern for the armies growing on the level below. The Sagathus don't bother with the Imp and Zebub spies that occasionally pass through the laboratories, but Jafaki and their colleagues can make marching through with a large army costly or even impossible. Jafaki plans to permit free passage only in exchange for additional concessions to bolster their ongoing experiments, even though Uravain is certain to balk at the cost. Jafaki's research seems to have drifted over the years through various abhorrent sciences: flesh warping, reanimation of the dead, selective breeding, or even golem creation. Yet they remain as focused on their goal of creating the perfect soldier as they were when they spoke to Belcora all those years ago. That word has driven Jafaki for centuries. Good soldiers? They've created those, and all have died by the dozens or hundreds in the arena. Great soldiers? Some of Jafaki's finest works have been nearly unstoppable, but nearly is not perfect. Jafaki pursues perfection for as long as it takes. Encountering Jafaki, a severe level 6 encounter. Jafaki does all their best work in Chamber F20, continuing their existence's driving purpose, scientifically engineering the most powerful monsters. They might be encountered elsewhere in the laboratory's level as needed to evaluate potential successes. They even strive to make the best of their failures, such as by cultivating the Sharangol behemoth in Area F26. Jafaki isn't likely to venture out in direct response to the heroes' presence. They consider the heroes to be little more than annoyances and trust in others to take care of them. Once the heroes show up here, Jafaki finally realizes they might have underestimated them. Creatures. Jafaki sends the Drider to answer any knock at the door, since other Sagathis sometimes come for Jafaki's guidance. The heroes might take advantage of this habit to take the preoccupied researcher by surprise. If the heroes try to force open the door or pick the lock, Jafaki realizes they're intruders and prepares for a fight. The Drider scrambles up the ceiling. Jafaki envenoms their rapier and casts Levitate to stay out of melee reach. Both use their spells as often as they can. The Drider uses Fireball and Acid Arrow to inflict direct damage, while Jafaki prefers spells that disorientate opponents and turn them against each other, like Confusion. They hope to distill out of which of the heroes is the toughest, then take that hero captive for experimentation. When direct damage is more useful, Jafaki hurls their alchemical bombs to catch as many targets as possible. Both of these foes fight to the death, the Drider out of loyalty to Jafaki, and Jafaki because they can't abandon their life's work. Side quest. Jafaki's current project is to manufacture a flesh golem with occult machinery. They intend to assemble it using the Morlock's head and the neatly labelled body parts scattered about the room. A sketchpad bears the instructions for assembly and notes that the ambient necromantic energy in the Abomination Vaults will animate the flesh golem. The key to this experiment is the occult machinery keeping its head alive, which focuses the ambient energy. Finishing the golem requires Jafaki's knowledge and expertise. Doing so goes beyond the hero's current capabilities. The heroes can, however, disconnect the machine to end the Morlock's torment. Disconnecting the machinery requires a hero to succeed at a DC 22 occultism check. On a success, the Morlock head dies, and the machinery can't be used again. On a failure, or if the hero simply smashes the machine, the Morlock head dies, but the invisible energies accumulated within the machine seek another source of stitched skin and meat to animate as a flesh golem. If the heroes left the fleshy statue of Belcora intact in the Temple of the Kanka, Area C34, these errant energies animated as a flesh golem instead. The flesh golem comes to life with an instinctive drive to find and kill whoever ruined the machine. It always knows the distance and direction to the heroes responsible, and immediately begins the pursuit through the Abomination Vaults. As the golem is far away, it might take hours to catch up to the heroes at your discretion, but when it does, it fights until destroyed. Disappearing Morlocks. Jafaki is wrapped up in their experiments and projects, but nevertheless has an effect on the surrounding dungeon. Every few days, Jafaki calls for one of the Morlocks in the Warp Brew Tavern to come here with the promise of being flesh warped into a Dreshken. The Morlocks eagerly come since Jafaki has created the many Dreshkens in the Abomination Vaults. But it's a ruse. Jafaki instead carefully dissects the Morlocks to add additional living pieces to their current Golem project. If the heroes come here but retreat, Jafaki continues these gruesome experiments. When the heroes return, there should be more Morlock parts affixed to the machinery, and fewer Morlocks in Area F11 if any remain there. Once he has run out of Morlocks to experiment on, Jafaki starts capturing and dissecting members of Shadow Malice instead. Treasure. Scattered around the room are all the pieces for an expanded alchemist lab, expanded healer's tools, and a superb repair kit. None of the proper pieces are together, however, so it takes several minutes of hunting around to assemble them all. In addition, a crafter's eyepiece and 2 vials of moderate antiplague sit on the shelves. Experience Award. Award the heroes 80 experience points rather than 30 experience points for successfully disconnecting the occult machinery. If they fail, award them this amount if they defeat the Flesh Golem in combat. Area F26. Arena Floor. A severe level 6 encounter. Dried blood from past combats forms a crust over the sand, spread across the arena floor. Torches illuminate the floor in a bright light, but hardly reach the walkway ringing the arena high above. 2 staircases lead up to this walkway, but a metal portcullis blocks each one. The site of hundreds of bloody battles, this arena entertained Belcora's bloodthirsty guests, and tested her many gladiators. From these champions, she chose officers to lead her monstrous armies. The portcullises are controlled by a wheel and lever on the balcony above, in Area E26, but a creature can lift a closed portcullis with a successful DC 25 athletics check. The doors to the east and west are unlocked. Creature. After the death of hundreds of monsters and gladiators, the arena is imbued with the essence of death. When Jafaki first dumped scraps from failed creations here, the decaying flesh spontaneously arose as Sharangols. The first few times this happened, Jafaki had their Driders drag the resulting Sharangols to the holding cells in Area E3 for study. Curious about how these large aberrations could grow, Jafaki assembled a giant pile of flesh and assigned a Sagathi to document the resulting Sharangol's composition and growth. The creature has grown into a massive Sharangol behemoth from incorporating scraps of Driders, Erdefens and other creatures. The monstrosity simply waits for meals of scraps and corpses. Outside of feeding, the creature remains dormant and is relatively unobservant. However, if it's attacked, or if a creature enters the area of its tremor sense, the Sharangol rouses and attacks. It fights ferociously, using its web trap against foes who flee, and shoots bone shards at creatures who remain out of its reach. The Sharangol behemoth fights until destroyed. Treasure. A few creatures have tested their might by fighting the Sharangol, and lost. Their equipment lies scattered in the bloody sand on the floor. A ghoul hide, a caterwaul sling, and a horn of fog.